Hi, Dr. Alex here, and welcome to one of my more sporadic and infrequent videos about making things, and in fact, an even more sporadic and infrequent video about making things for the motorbike, and slightly less infrequent videos about making stuff from record storage boxes. Those who've seen any of my weird videos about making stuff before will know that I made some speaker cabinets out of record storage boxes, which I got from a local second-hand junk and record shop, which I still use to this day. They're very good. Excellent little speaker cabinets. And the other, even more infrequent video was me upgrading the gauges on my Honda 125 Super Dream because the gauges have become almost unreadable. And I managed to get ones from a Honda 250 Super Dream and managed to make them fit into the 125, and they're working brilliantly too. But you can see the bodge I made of that in this video here. And you can see my record box to speaker cabinet conversion videos here too. Anyway, without any further ado, let's go into why I made panniers out of record storage boxes. Well, up to now, I've gone through a series of panniers bought specially for the purpose of eBay mostly, and while some of them looked good, they all in various ways failed to do the job ultimately over time. Either they fell apart, they were not durable enough, and in all cases they were a little bit small, and the last set I bought were just so naff that I was starting to make them less floppy and slightly more durable when the thought struck me, why am I bothering to tart up these terrible panniers that I bought when I could build them from scratch? And then immediately I thought about the record storage boxes because they are just the right size for this job, at least so I hoped. And so I went off and bought 2 of those, one for each side, obviously, and bought a few other bits and bobs, which I'll talk about as we go through how I made them, and eventually put them together. And when it stopped raining long enough, I managed to put them on the bike, and as you'll see, they fit, they work well, and there's a little cutaway to me talking about the bike on video, where I actually talk about a little other thing that I've done to the bike, or rather had done to the bike recently, which has made it run really well. You'll see that when I come to that bit of the video. But without further ado, let's talk about making these panniers out of record storage boxes. As mentioned, the first step was buying the 2 storage boxes, which you can see here. They were in pretty good nick, pretty good condition, and only cost £10 each, which is perfectly reasonable. I've spent slightly less on a record storage box in the past. I think £8's the cheapest I've managed to get them for. But I wasn't going to balk at paying a tenner for each of them because they were largely matching. They were nice. They had metal clasps. I was happy with these. I then nipped down to Sports Direct to buy 4 belts, which I was going to use to, well, as belts to attach to the sides of the boxes to help strap them over the bike. And they were selling them in Sports Direct for 2 belts for £8. So I spent a whopping £16 buying these 4 belts, which are actually way bigger than I needed in terms of length. And they are what ended up holding the panniers in place, as you'll see shortly. I also had to buy some black silicone sealant for reasons you'll see shortly, and some short bolts to help bolt the straps onto the boxes. I thought of various different ways of attaching the straps to the boxes and having them going in opposite directions on each box and having them using the actual clasps to attach them. And then in the end, I abandoned all those ideas and just went for using holes drilled in the belts and essentially laces to keep them together over the top of the bike, because that's how some of the previous panniers I bought were held in place. And actually, of all the things that were wrong about those, the one thing that worked very well was how they were attached to the bike over the top of the bike. So I just copied them. So the first thing I did was drill some holes through the belts and the boxes so I could bolt them in place. First thing I did was feed the bolts through. Then I put the nuts on the other side, of course. At first, I put the nuts on loosely, finger tight. And Nala the cat was very interested in what was going on. So interested, in fact, she got inside immediately because it's a box, she's a cat, she'll fit. Then I tightened the bolts up properly using my ratchet socket set thingy, holding them in place with an adjustable wrench from the other side. I know I should have been using a spanner, but I'm not going to sweat it too much over the finesse applied to this thing. After they were in place, I put black silicone sealant over the bolts and the nuts to stop them from rubbing against the side of the bike in any way and causing damage to paintwork and stuff, although they were probably nowhere near any paint, but just in case, so they couldn't scratch things. Silicone sealant over the bolts and also over the nuts as well. Barely see them inside because they're now black silicone sealant covering the nuts, which are themselves against the black inside of the record boxes. Again, I cannot emphasize enough how smart looking these boxes are. I know that inside they've got something like chipboard at most, or possibly even just a thick sort of cardboard forming the actual insides of the boxes, but they are completely covered in vinyl or some sort of plastic covering. So hopefully it'll keep the rain off well enough. They've been out in the rain a bit while I was working on them, so here's hoping. But I think they should be at least as durable, and probably way more durable than the ones I bought from eBay, than the proper bought ones. And here they were, everything ready to go outside to put on the bike. I just thought I'd close them so you can see once again the fantastic metal clasps they've got, which so persuaded me to get these particular two. They're not exactly matching, they're almost exactly matching, but the clasps aren't quite the same as each other, and the handle attachments aren't exactly the same as each other, but they are so near it doesn't really make any difference. And they are both the same size. They were designed to hold 12-inch records, so they had to be kind of a standard size. So I was very happy with how they turned out. The next thing I did once they were outside was add some extra heat proofing to the bottoms of them, because they will be in contact with the exhaust pipes. So I first attached some adhesive fabric cloth type insulation between the very bottom of the case and the next stage, which was then using aluminium foil tape over the top of those to add yet another layer of heat proofing between the exhaust pipes and the bottom of these panniers. The most fiddly part of this was feeding the straps between where the seat attaches to the bike, which is where they've always gone through, and all the previous ones I've had, they always fed through there, but I had to keep the seat quite far down to be able to pull it through and keep it tight. Suffice to say, it was a bit fiddly. I'm taking this photograph under the seat with it mostly down, and I managed to just, by putting my hands into weird positions, get the laces through the two strap sets and then tie them up with nice double knots and secure the panniers in place on both sides this way. And was still able to close the seat, thankfully. And although it's harder to reach the release mechanism from the outside now, I can still do it and release the seat, thankfully. And as proof, here is the first photo I took from the back of the two panniers in place. You'll notice here you can still see the strap ends, the buckles, hanging down from the panniers. I left them there in case they might prove to be useful, but shortly after this, and having got it through to outside, I actually found they were getting in the way more than anything else, so I removed the buckles that you can see hanging down. But this is nearly the final product. And the one thing I was really worried about was, would this now fit through the narrow gate to the side of the property I live in, to the outside of the property, because the bike did fit through before. Obviously, that's how it gets parked there. But it was always a squeeze. I had to just get the handlebars through. I've always fitted through, so I kind of figured it should fit, even with the panniers in place. But it was a worry, but I made it. I managed to make it through to the outside, and as you can see here, the panniers look pretty damn good. I'm perfectly happy with how they did, and they made it through that gate. So as you can see, here's the bike sitting there outside with the panniers in place. The heat proofing seems to be doing the job. I did take it for a test ride shortly after this, but first of all, I will now allow me to take over from the video I took outside talking about the carbs, of all things, rather than the panniers. Well, this video has mostly been about making these panniers, and they work and they fit through the gate, which is perhaps even more important. There's a gate, fits through. As an aside, I thought I'd mention one other change that's been made to the bike, which is changing the carbs entirely. The bike has not been running well for like the last 6 to 9 months, for two reasons. The main one of these being the two old carbs it had, I'll flash what they were up on the screen, were running really badly, particularly the left-hand one, and could not find new versions of them, the genuine CB125 twin carbs of any type, brand new anyway, and the second-hand ones I got were as crap as the ones that were on there already. So eventually I bought these brand new CB125 single carbs, 2 of them, and the amazing mechanics at Bravos put these things on, and they are really good, and they've brought the bike up to about, say, 95% of its full working capacity. There's still an ongoing problem. There's a crack in the head, which has not been fixed. It was not supposed to be causing a problem, but it is, and now they've admitted that that's probably the last bit of the problems. It's not running exactly as it should do, but it's so damn close. I'm not going to fix that until I absolutely need to. I do have a replacement head, but until it needs to be changed out. It stops running properly again, until it stops running well again. I'm not going to bother with that. So it's now running really well. And the one thing they couldn't do with these, because they had two carbs for the singles, two single carbs taking the place of the carbs for the twin, is they couldn't fix the choke connection up properly. So there's no choke. If I really needed to, I can manually put the choke on both of them just about by putting my fingers in there. But it's starting so well, it hasn't needed, and they pointed this out, it doesn't need the choke to start because it's set up well. That said, I'm going to see if that really does work, having had the bike sat for over a week. Will it start without a choke now? It's quite cold as well. I think it probably should, and even if it doesn't start on the first hit of the button, I can probably get it running just with the use of the throttle. But let's find out if it, with these two single carbs. Oh, one more note I forgot to mention. Weirdly, to get the thing running well on these two single carbs in place of the ones for the twin, they actually had to rejet it with larger jets, which, given these are for to run a single cylinder of 125, and they're currently running single cylinders of 64cc, it's amazing they needed larger jets to be rejetted to be larger to work better. You'd have thought they'd be already too large and it'd go the other way, but there they go. To get it to work as it is really well, they had to put larger jets in. But there you go. Let's see if it starts or not. Yeah, well, that has been sitting for a week, and it did start. First hit of the button. I did not set that up. I have just literally pushed it through there, made sure these things fit, and the engine is running. And there we go. It's now it's warmed up a little bit. I don't think it'll. Okay, still needs to warm up a bit. Still needs to warm up a bit, but yeah, that's pretty quick. Pretty quick bursting back into life. So there you go. That was the little addendum for this video. The panniers are what it's really all about, but the bike's running really well on two CB125 single carbs stuck in place of the two twin carbs. And there you go. Back to me talking with photos now. And now that I've finished yammering on about the carbs, by the way, I'm not sure if I was entirely clear on what I was saying there. Obviously, this is a CB125 twin. It's got twin cylinders and obviously twin carbs feeding them, although I believe you can get one of the other Honda 125 twins has a single carb feeding both cylinders. That is possible, obviously. I have a car, which is a twin cylinder, but with one carb. But this one is a twin cylinder with twin carbs. What may have not been very clear in the video as I was talking about it was that this is a CB125 twin, and each carb will have fed one cylinder only, which means each original carb would have only ever had to feed a 62cc cylinder, because each cylinder adds up, 62 and 62, to make 124. It wasn't quite 125, it's 124. And the carbs I bought in the end that worked to replace them were brand new CB125 single carbs, so they were each designed to feed a 125cc cylinder. So they should have been way too big for the job. Well, twice the size they should have been. And as I said in that previous video clip, weirdly, they need to be rejetted to bigger jets to allow more flow of fuel through, which is the opposite of what I would have expected. They should have been putting too much fuel through in the first place because they're feeding 125's single cylinders on their own on one bike with one cylinder and one carb, whereas this is now each one's doing the job of what was the carburetor designed for one cylinder on the twin, in other words, a 62cc cylinder. But there you go. They have been rejetted larger and they now work perfectly in tandem, working in a way they never were supposed to, acting as the carbs on a 125 twin. I hope that made some sense. Anyway, that's all I have to say for now. I think we're done here. The bike has been upgraded. Not just the carbs. More importantly for this video, the panniers are now these homemade DIY panniers made from record storage boxes. And I think they look damn good. And they certainly do seem to do the job. I went shopping on the bike immediately after doing the video you just saw and got some shopping, stuffed it in the panniers, and they did the job very well indeed. I'm not saying this is the best way of doing it, the best way to get panniers, but it certainly was relatively inexpensive and they seem to be robust and do the job so far. I'll let you know if they fall apart. And until the next video, whatever that may be, to all of my watchers, subscribers and viewers, thank you for joining me for this video, and until the next one, take care.
Masters, mistresses, the Doctor requires materials in order to maintain the TARDIS and ensure continued functionality. He similarly requires carbon-based comestibles to sustain his own biological functions and existence. Master would never say this, but he requires aid beyond that supplied by this unit in order to acquire these. To aid the Doctor in his various tasks and creations, this can be most effectively achieved via Patreon or Substack subscriptions, or through donations directly to PayPal. Or if you desire physical goods in return for your contributions, written accounts of my travels with the Doctor are also available on Amazon. Links are in the description below. Thank you, Masters, mistresses.